They had taken over education and everything changed. There was a complete turnaround. So as a witness to that, it was quite amazing, quite incredible. And I was very, very happy and very proud of that point. You know, like we were making some headway. We were taking over education. And even the climate of the schools had changed in our communities. I remember being in Eskasoni. We had moved back to Eskasoni at that time. And I remember living in Eskasoni, and the whole climate at the school had changed because now it was the band that was in control of education. It wasn't Indian Affairs. The decisions were not made in Amherst or Halifax or headquarters in Ottawa or wherever. It was made in the community. So that was a huge change, but they still didn't have jurisdiction. And it wasn't until 1993 when they had formed an organization, which is Mi'kmaw Kina'matnewey. And for 5 years, they negotiated with the federal government to gain jurisdiction over education. And it was the first one in the country. So in 1998, finally, when the federal government passed legislation for the formation of the Mi'kmaw Education Act, and it was at first referred to as Bill C30. And John Jerome, my colleague, always confuses that with Bill C31. He always says BC, and I'm always correcting him. No, it's Bill C30. And then, of course, 33, which came later on, and we'll talk about that later. So Bill C30 became the Mi'kmaw Education Act. And at that same time, not too long after, the provincial government also followed suit here in Nova Scotia. Excuse me. So when the provincial government followed suit, and what they did was they recognized our jurisdiction. The federal government had already passed the legislation and we had jurisdiction. And the provincial government followed suit. So that in 1999, we had both federal legislation and provincial legislation recognizing our jurisdiction over education. And the communities in Nova Scotia, the Mi'kmaw communities, would have jurisdiction over education as a part of the MK. So that only if they were a part of the MK, they would have the jurisdiction. If they were not in the MK or not a part of the MK, they would still be an Indian Act band. And I say Indian Act band, and you have to keep in mind that with the jurisdiction, they were also no longer under the Indian Act. So as a self-government agreement, as a self-governing organization, we were not under the Indian Act. We were no longer under the Indian Act. And when some people heard that, they flew into a panic. What? What are we going to do without the Indian Act? What are we going to do without the Indian Act? And, you know, some people were there like, a lot more than what we've ever done. So things really started to change in education then. And I can remember, because back in 98, 99, I started working here at CBU as the director of the Mi'kmaw College Institute, the first Mi'kmaw College Institute. And I have to say that I think that it was a really good time in education. It was really exciting. It was really exciting for me. It might be boring for everyone else, but it was so exciting for me because CBU had Mi'kmaw Studies courses. And I'm not selling CBU here. I'm just telling you this is how it was. It was the only university in at least the Atlantic provinces that had Mi'kmaw Studies courses that were recognized by a university. And they also had Maritime Provinces Higher Education Council approval. And with that, you could get a major in Mi'kmaw Studies here at Cape Breton University. Cape Breton University also was delivering programs in community, and that made a huge difference. And those programs that were delivered in community were the ones that were most successful. They had graduated more students than any other university in the country. So that was quite exciting times, and to be a part of it, it was fantastic. My dad was a professor here at CBU. He taught for many years in Mi'kmaw Studies, and they had worked so hard. There was a number of people here as well. Stephanie Inglis was one of them, Dr. Stephanie Inglis. Dr. Marie Baptiste was part of it at that time. Her partner, Saugage Henderson, was also a part of that. Grand Captain Alec Denny. There's so many people. The late Stephen Kavanaugh was part of it. Keith Brown, Dr. Jacqueline Scott. There's so many. Jane Lewis that, I can't, like I'll start forgetting people if I start naming them, but they were all part of it. And we worked so hard, and they worked tirelessly, because all of this had to be approved by the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Council in order for it to happen. And all of the work was done, the arguments were made, everything had been put in place. It was just a matter of making sure that it got through the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Council. And I'll tell you, it was exciting to be a part of it and to eventually have the approval to do it. And so many students have, I think over 600 must be now, have graduated from Cape Breton University. Yes, Mi'kmaw students, or First Nation students. I shouldn't say just Mi'kmaw, because there are other tribes that have gone through here as well. So that was amazing, and still is. And so to continue to talk about the Mi'kmaw Education Act and Mi'kmaw Kina'matnewey, which is what I'm here for. As an organization, we started to, when I started working there in 2000, some of the things that we started talking about at the time was, standards, setting standards in education. That was an important factor because, like if you're under a funding agreement with the Department of Indian Affairs, it's always the question comes up, are you doing something relevant? Is there any success? Is it cost effective? So those are the things that always come forward, or that's what they ask us. Prove your success. Show us that it's cost effective. Show us that it's relevant. And so those are the things that we always consider. And when you're considering that, you think, well, at the bottom, the bottom line for me and for the rest of us at Mi'kmaw Kina'matnewey was always, how is this going to help our students? What can we do to make sure that our students are going to be doing well at the end of the day? And that was the most important point for all of us. And I guess I've been very fortunate to have the staff that I do have working for me, because we work together as a team. And, I have never been one to stand over anyone's shoulder. I've always, believed that they have the same passion as well as I do, because they've been in education for so long, and they have kids too. And so they're really a very good team, and they work very hard, and we made things happen. And I guess you just have to roll up your sleeves and just do it, like the Nike commercial says. And I always have one of my cousins who works here at CBU, Ann Denny, she's always telling me that. Just do it. Whenever we talk about things in education, she's always saying, just do it.
This is how this came about.
Exactly, just do it. So I'm not doing an advertisement for Nike. It's just the line that a phrase that we really attach to.